really appreciate the invitation to join the webinar today. So ACE plus PDR, we announced the offering. It actually went live or effective yesterday, July 17. ACE is, of course, ACE, Automated Collateral Evaluation, plus a PDR, Property Data Report. And it's an option for cash out and certain non-cash out refinance transactions. The PDR is the Property Data Report, which is essentially a vehicle to attain additional property information that's needed to make or help better inform the ACE decision collected by on-site trainers, trained data collectors. And so to your question, why now? I don't think there's a lot behind necessarily why now, other than, the markets are changing. There's a need for more information, and particularly more property data and condition information. And I would say, at least speaking for Freddie Mac, and we may get into this a little bit later, we very much endorse a sharper lens in terms of the focus around property condition. We do not buy C5 and C6 properties. So there tends to be, even through appraisal reports, a lot of blurred lines around property condition and deferred maintenance and repairs needed when you get particularly to the lower end of the spectrum. So it is intended to better inform our ACE decisions. It's also call out to the lenders. It's, another non-appraiser option. So it's odd that an appraiser is here talking to you and advocating a little bit for this product, but really it's an important step down the road of innovation and modernization. And it's just one of many things that we're currently doing, testing, and I think there's many, many more things to come.
No, that's great and very helpful. Just for clarification too, pretend not everyone is an appraiser, and what a C5 and what a C6 actually means to us laymen's in the evaluation space.
Yeah, it's a good question. So to Josh and everyone else in the world who is has an inquiring mind. So the C and Q, right? The condition and quality ratings that we require appraisers in the appraisal space to discern on properties is kind of a tricky business, and it's at the end of observing a property's quality and as it was built, as well as its current condition. And without getting too deep into the weeds, we could have a whole webinar on C ratings and B ratings. But C ratings are important, and they're not necessarily easy. So I was kind of quick to quip about some of the inconsistency we see. I sat there as an appraiser, and it's not always easy. If you want to Google, Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae condition and quality ratings, there's actually a list of ratings, and they require the appraiser in the appraisal space to take disparate kind of condition elements through a home, and it gets a little harder as you get an older home, where components may or may not have been updated at different points in time. And anyway, we require them to roll that up into a rating. The ratings are important because they draw a line for us on property condition as it relates to property condition or risk we're willing to accept. So it's kind of a long answer to your question, but they're ratings that tie to the condition of a property, and that's vitally important to us.
It's interesting as you speak to that too, is putting out, with the ACE and PDR, a non-appraiser option to drive that, which previously was via waivers. Waivers are everyone's favorite. I'm sure Kevin can speak to how much he enjoys waivers and not having to deal with the appraisal process as a whole. But that being said, I'm just kind of curious, do you think this is a goal of this is to continue to offer more and more waivers with this data collection and gathering this information? And I'd also like to hear from Scot Rose, you as well, and Kevin as well on this, around what we think we should be doing to drive more waivers and gathering this information.
The question was to me?
Yeah, we'll start off with you.
Yes. So I think, we're not driving necessarily to a predetermined, we have to have X amount of waivers or waiver generated options, but I think it's a real thing. One of the things that we do track and follow very closely is appraiser capacity and volume. And I'm sure Kevin and a lot of others that sit on the front end of the business, and you all as well, can relate, particularly the past couple of years, busy times, busy markets. It's not always easy to find and get an appraiser who is not only qualified, has competency, geo-competency, but can also meet a turn time metric in busy times. So, the line I share in front of my appraisal brethren are, I don't know that we need an appraisal on every single loan decision in the country. Some are very low risk. Some have very favorable, lending LTVs and components where you might not need to stand in a long line and pay an exorbitant fee for an appraisal when it's a busy time. So I think that's a long answer to your question, but I think it's, we're going to continue to try to innovate, introduce non-appraisal options where we can. And as you creep up the spectrum in complexity and more heterogeneous properties and unique and complex and rural, and there's plenty of appraisal work against the existing appraisers, I feel that it could be a nice balancing of that from a product offering perspective.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Go ahead, Josh.
No, please.
I was just gonna add and say, from my perspective, I think of it less around the support for further and more waivers, and more as a foundation for a new spectrum of valuation products and solutions that we're building for the marketplace going forward. When we start with a good foundation of consistent property data collection using more advanced technologies and ways to create more repeatable scientific data collection solutions, we're building the foundation to do a lot more, even as it relates to the recent desktop release. What that requires is a certain amount of property data collection to be there in order for those types of products and services to be viable. You move into the hybrid appraisal space as well. And we're building basically a core foundation of consistency and a standard way of collecting property data to support a full spectrum of data or of appraisal and collateral valuation products and solutions.
No, absolutely. And it's strange, right? As an AMC, you'd think we'd want everything to be an appraisal, but we don't, right? We know that that causes challenges, as Scott alluded to earlier, around when volumes are up. There was a lot of pain in 21, and seeing more and more options out here that doesn't create additional risk for Freddie, for lending partners is exciting to us, and making sure that we do it correctly and accurately each time. I know, Kevin, you have any thoughts on these waivers and things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and sorry if I'm too shocking with my background, but we go to battle here every day. Actually, Josh and Scott look more like King Leonidas with their backs against the wall on the front lines, but with the beards. But I'm just a poser over here. Volumes down, rates are up, and I don't think there's it's not a coincidence that these products are starting to roll out. When we had untenable supply dislocation and quite frankly a shortage of appraisers, where were the values going to land? It's hard to automate. You hear in the stock market, it's hard to catch a falling knife. Well, what is it when it's going the other way? It's hard to catch a bottle rocket, and you can't automate values that just seem to be going up endlessly. It's not normal to have 22% year-over-year appreciation or 15 or 17, but we're in a normal market now. And I know it feels, for those of us that haven't been through this part of the cycle right now, it feels awful, but we're in a normal cyclical purchase market. And I think there's a lot of good data out there. And we still have supply imbalance. It's still not enough homes. But if we can get to a 3 to 6 month supply, and when homes are completed and under contract, if they're still going for less, in less than a month. The average time is still under 30 days. So, but having said that, I think from Freddie and Fannie and Ginny's perspective, there's less risk that the collateral is just going to be, judged. This price just keeps going up, and where does it stop? I think we're in a normal market, and the timing is good. And look, we want to protect the GSEs and the risk of the loans, that are securitized. Some of us lived through 06, 07, 08, and it was brutal. And so we're not going to have as crazy of a deleveraging as it relates to values, thank God. But we still have an appraiser shortage, an aging appraiser workforce. Their skill set is unbelievable with the regulation that came out through Dodd-Frank. I know it's kind of unpopular in the origination channel, but there are some really good parts of Dodd-Frank that worked, and we just saw it, whether it's non-QM being carved out and let them have their private fiascos without sacrificing the integrity of Fannie Freddie Ginnie loans. And that's the same thing with collateral, because at the end of the day, we have not seen job losses yet. We've seen them in our industry, but not necessarily in a full-blown recession in this country. And when people start to lose jobs and walk away from homes, and we have actual defaults, these values, there's a little bit of that where they start to come down. We don't know what it's going to be like. No one ever knows what the recession is like, whether it's mild or drastic as it relates to employment. Unfortunately, so far, employment's been holding up. We love the convenience of having automation. Scott, when you explain this whole concept to me about combining data with automation to have a quicker process, and it's also more accurate as far as the data that comes in, with the ADR. I mean, it's a dream for lenders. So I'm you've got our gears turning as one of our premier partners on the appraisal side, and you've got us thinking about how to implement this as it relates to the loans that we run through LP, and just and I was surprised to hear that the appraisers are adopting it. I would have thought they'd be the ones like, no way, I'm not going to automate my job out of existence. But man, even them grabbing onto this, which you said that they really have been, they're just getting more work done, and so it's been a win for everybody.
No, that's a great point. And there are, to your point, there is risk of some challenges coming in the coming months with the big R word. We'll limit it. You said it enough for all of us. To that point though, with the ACE plus PDR, what is, and I guess I'll kind of defer to Scot Rose here, for people on the call, what does that data collection look like? What is the information that's being gathered? What makes it successful to help Freddie make these decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I'd start off by saying it's pretty comprehensive. It's not light, it's very deep. And it incorporates a lot of what you would think of coming out of the front page of the 1004 up to this point, with some additional aspects to it, some conditionalities and ability to kind of drill down into certain aspects of the property. But it's also more standardized, right? Everything is broken down into a schema and a format that, to KP's point, can be delivered in a more digital fashion and probably drive more models and things on the back end. And again, really creating something that's more of a standard, that doesn't see inconsistencies, and that allows us to get multiple people out to properties, collecting data in the same way and reporting it in the same way. And then, Scott might be able to elaborate a bit, but important aspects, as he mentioned, for them are, understanding the conditions of the property and just ensuring that they're lending on properties that they feel comfortable with. But at the same time, they're building a standard. They're building a standard for Freddie to say, this is what we want to see around property data collection, whether you're using it in combination with a waiver or you're going to drive a downstream hybrid appraisal report. And realistically, I know that the desktop requirements are a little bit lighter as were rolled out earlier this year, but moving the industry towards a direction of saying, if we could capture data in this fashion across all properties in a standard way at time of list, it just opens up such a great opportunity, especially for the lending community and for the real estate community, to move these transactions through in a more rapid fashion. So we don't have purchases being held up, and why you have people who have a lot of anxiety around these transactions in the marketplace, reducing the amount of time they have to wait to understand where they stand from a collateral perspective. You
had a good example in one of the markets of the difference in time of a normal order versus one in this process. Do you have some more examples to throw out? Because I mean, at the end of the day, typically the longest pole in the tent is ordering the appraisal. And you don't want the finger pointed at you. You want it to be title and escrow now, right? So what are some examples? I mean, you told me some things, I was blown away.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, ACE plus PDR is very new, but what we've been doing is we've been working with our partners at Freddie and test and learn programs as well. So doing more hybrid appraisals, as well as some data and waiver type solutions. But, we're even in the hybrid scenario, so everyone's clear that there's really three verticals as I see it. You have a property data collection and a waiver. which has no appraisal component to it. Most likely, you have a desktop appraisal, which requires certain attributes to be available for the appraiser to support a desktop appraisal. And then you have hybrid, which is where we basically send somebody out to collect the same data set to support an appraisal being done by an appraiser at their desk, utilizing these solutions to drive that. And in those programs, we're actually seeing appraisals come back in less than 24 hours. We're under a 5-day average nationwide. Overall, it's greater than 2 days difference than traditional. And in some markets, outlying areas, you might see, 10, 12, 13-day improvements in more rural areas. So, every KPI across the spectrum is improved, 85% reduction in revision rates in the hybrid process, because we're collecting data again in a more standard way. And all solutions aren't created equal, and ClassValuation does have a very comprehensive solution where we use full 3D scanning technology, which I think drives a lot of the downstream outcome on the quality and the reduction in revision rates. But all of these solutions really can drive the speed and our ability to move them through the system faster. To the ACE plus PDR, all we need there is the property data collection and the waiver. We don't even have to send to the downstream appraisal component. So, you're getting into a world where, instead of waiting 5, 6, 7, 8 days, you're 2 days out, 3 days out.
Yeah, I'll go one step further, Scott. So all that's got me super excited, and you're on point. And think of a world, like where you sit and where Kevin sits, really think of if aspects of componentizing this appraisal process and really focusing on this independent collection of the data, it's already going to be able to plug and play into what you mentioned, right? The ACE plus PDR, the desktop, the hybrid, and any other innovation in that middle part of the spectrum. But think about if there were even some industry adoption to push elements of that property data collection where you collect everything, the data, the photos, the sketch, the floor plan, and the purchase space at the time of a listing. If that component, that packet existed, think about the compression on turn time and busy times, getting that into the appraiser. There's no scheduling. It's just delivery of data.
100%. And I love the way you called it a packet, because that's how we view it as well. Essentially, where that data can be collected, it could be stored in the MLS as a data packet required for appraisal. It can even be in the private section. It doesn't have to go out into the public. And then they could use components of it to also improve the marketing value of their property online with virtual tours and floor plans and other things of that nature. So huge opportunity. And I believe strongly that's the direction that we're going, and it's the right way to go. Now you're talking about purchase appraisals getting done in hours, not days.
Well, think of how much money consumers are saving with all these different products, right?
Yep.
There's a big push right now, in DC, to work and continue to create more affordable housing products. This is part of that. It fits nicely into it. Obviously with a waiver, it's free, right? But the other products that are kind of hybrid or in between, over time, that could be literally, tens of millions of dollars saved a year by consumers by using these products as lenders and originators. The consumers aren't having to bear that cost, and that's a win. Every dollar counts. I'm sure everyone's looking at the gas pump lately, so it counts.
Yeah, I also
Absolutely.
like the competitiveness of the time frame too. When you start shaving days off, and you're seeing difficult markets. Look at what we saw in Austin in 2021. And just the challenges there as everybody was flooding with new businesses coming in, new markets opening up. It became a challenge for agents to close in 30 days like they wanted to. They were closing in 45 because of challenges in our space with the third-party services, valuation, title, and everything else. Starting to get these things back to under a few days here, you can meet every borrower's guideline. Their timeline that they want. They want to close in 10 days. This gives them an opportunity that just was never there before. That's exciting to be competitive in that area.
And I'll throw out one more thing. You read the stats. The average loan takes 42 days to close. Why? Why is that? It shouldn't. When we have our stuff together on a file, waiver or not, we're seeing closings here from literally loan application to finish 7 days if the borrower signs the waiver to receive a copy of their appraisal. Well, if there's a waiver, obviously they're not getting a copy of anything. But think of all the hedge risk that's out there. I mean, at least with A paper lenders in this space, selling Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie deals, we take in our locks and we hedge our pipeline. And the duration of our hedge, if I can bring that down 3 days or 5 days, that's massively less risk, tremendously more efficiency gained. And again, I think the pressure starts to go to other parts of our industry to shorten the life cycle. You can do both. You can be faster and better and still not be more risky. And that's the thing that, they are not mutually exclusive. And so if we can continue to monitor risk on collateral and shorten the whole time frame of everything, I honestly think, SIFMA and all, the structured, securities industry, they're going to need to look at this and go, why does it take so long to structure these securities? I mean, not to take this in a whole, different direction, but it has to do with time. I'm a big time guy. Like, how do you save time? How do you provide more value in less time? You look at what's going on with some of these lenders that are blowing up in the non-QM space. It's because it takes so long for them to securitize loans and then sell the loans. They're locking and taking in forward commitments and getting collateral evaluated, by the way, on loans at 4.5%. By the time they get it together to securitize, the going rate's 7.5%, and no one wants to buy their loan. So what? 800 people out of a job? So why is that, right? Can we shorten the duration? I mean, if you can shorten the duration and that reduces hedge risk, you might actually have Fannie and Freddie get spun out of conservatorship one day. Or else, if it continues to take so long to securitize loans and put them down the pipeline, they'll always have to be backstopped by the government. There's no private entity that could ever backstop a pandemic. I mean, look what happened when the CARES Act came into it. All the private money backed away. Like, nope, sorry, your Fannie and Freddie loans are worth zero. We know they're not worth zero. They just didn't have enough liquidity. And so again, this is all part of actually getting down to 10-day life cycle of a loan and maybe even shortening the whole securitization life cycle. That's going to take a lot more talk, but you can't even go that path, if you don't do steps like we're doing right now and talking about on the collateral evaluation first.
No, excellent points. Excellent way to look at it. One thing too that we should be aware of too, when we talk about making it just the data and giving it to the appraiser, or using the for the hybrid process, or just using the ACE in the data set, I don't know, Scott, we've talked a lot internally around appraisal bias and what this has potential to do by eliminating that interaction. Do you have any thoughts on that, or where we should be continuing to look at that to have the best impact with what's going on in the industry?
Absolutely. I mean, we're obviously highly focused on that issue. We've been participating in it in many ways. One of which was the Brookings Institute Challenge on valuing homes in Black communities, where we were recently recognized as a spotlight innovator. And the reason for that is kind of multifaceted. But when you separate the appraiser from the home and the interaction with the consumer themselves, that's building a little bit of separation there. Secondly, the property data collection that we use with 3D scan data is totally transparent and comprehensive. And it takes the ability for the actual appraiser to present that property data in any particular way or fashion, or even not present the whole property overall. And when you have data being collected through technologies it's repeatable and it's standardized, and it's left to the technology to collect that information and present it downstream in a fully transparent way, it just allows for a lot more, again, sorry for the reuse of the word, transparency in the overall process, and people to revisit that property and have the appraiser now basing their opinions off the data that's being provided to them versus being in control of the whole process. So we're excited to continue to monitor and see how that can have an impact. But definitely people paying close attention to it right now and seeing the potential value.
Scott, you were in our boardroom 4 years ago when we first met face to face, showing us 3D scan technology. And I mean, I guess I'll kind of speak on behalf, because I saw one of the questions from the realtors in there. I mean, repeatable, low error rate. I mean, I got to tell you, I mean, it's pretty impressive. I was hanging out at a buddy's pool, and I got a guy, buddy who is a construction guy, and another guy who owns a pool company on Saturday. And then one guy whipped out his phone. He just took laser measurements of the pool and the hot tub like that. I mean, with his phone, right? So there was a question in the chat, one of the realtors was saying, well, how do you trust these people to come in that aren't licensed, and I think it kind of goes to trusting the technology. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was over 4 years ago now. You came in the spring, and when you guys acquired that technology, it was super impressive. I think that is that awareness that we're trying to show people, that we're relying more on technology that's very accurate and data driven to collect data, so much so that it makes Fannie, Freddie, and Ginny feel good about it. Maybe you could touch on just to kind of half answer the question and kind of talk about something I thought was really cool. The technology that you guys acquired that I saw that I was just blown away with 4 years ago, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, letting the technology do the work has always been kind of our auspice, right? It's really focusing more on a customer, the individuals going out there, focusing more on a customer service and a better experience for everybody involved. And it begins with background checks and everything else you do for any third parties you're sending in any home or any property. However, then it's backed by the fact that we don't have to train the individuals in our space to collect these data sets. With the ClassValuation solution, all they need to do is go out and image the property. And to your point, the computer extracts all of that data and information, generates, very, very, high quality floor plans and, showing interior wall partitions, egress and ingress, et cetera. We're able to collect it again in a repeatable way. So we've sent 5 people out, you get the 5 same results. And we've done a ton of testing with this as well. We to our conversation last week, talking about appraiser buy-in, we get a ton of confidence from our appraiser community because of the amount of information that we give them and how the process is completed. Even one particular appraiser, we flew out to, I think it was North Carolina. We scanned 5 properties with him, one of his partners, their admin assistant, as well as a couple of trainees, and had them all scan the properties with very little training at all. And then we returned the results and said, you tell us who scanned which properties. And not only did we scan them, but they also measured them themselves. And we were able to show how you couldn't tell who actually did it. From an admin to a professional appraiser who's been trained for years, you got the same result from the use of the technology. And even compared to these very highly trained appraisers doing their own measurements, it was highly consistent and was able to build their buy-in and really inspire confidence. And that's what we've been working on for the last 3 years, is just inspiring confidence with all the stakeholders. To your point earlier, let's not degrade downstream risk just trying to speed up the cycle times. We have to solve for all the solutions. We need to improve risk, we need to improve cycle times, and we need to improve the experience around this process for everybody involved. And there's a lot of constituents to this process. If you think about it, you've got the real estate agents asking questions in here. You've got originators, you've got homeowners, you've got rating agencies, you've got investors, a lot of constituents that, depend on this process, and everybody deserves an improved experience with these modernization programs.
So why not on a refinance, just text it to the bar and they download the app and they just scan it and they're done? What's all the wait for?
It'll get there. Give it time. Baby steps, man.
No, that's a great point. Oh, sorry, Scott, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, no, to Kevin's point, like the technology is advancing so rapidly. What's so great to see is, like, initially this 3D scan technology was super major differentiator, and it still is for class today. But as the soon years start to go on, this stuff is going to continue to come out of the woodwork. It's more readily available. It's out there. It exists. And I believe it should become a requirement that all data is collected through these fashions. There's no reason to leave it to manual data collection anymore.
And I think that advancement in the emerging technology, Scott, is going to really help push the innovation, because we're going to be able to see what it's able to do. To your point, today it helps level set the consistency, the repeatability, the accuracy in attaining the property data collection, measuring a home, for crying out loud, getting a floor plan. And to your point, you can send anybody from, an intern to the president of a small company out to a home, and they all can deploy technology from their phone and get the same thing. And that's big.
Oh, absolutely. Being scalable and repeatable is a massive thing that has not always been the easiest thing for our industry. To that point, Scott, how is this all going to work? People are going to go to LP and what they're submit the information and it's going to come back, or can you kind of share that for, since this is, as you stated, so new, released yesterday, it's very new to the world. So what are your thoughts for the people on the phone that are on the Zoom here that are listening in? What are they going to experience?
Yeah, my understanding is on the front end, you'll submit to LPA, you'll get messaging that'll return that will indicate, like today, if you're eligible for a waiver, hey, you're eligible for ACE plus PDR, and then you will see the other associated initial messaging. At that point, you can reference, this is not in our guide, it's in a bulletin. I'd reference and direct folks to Bulletin 2022-13. Not to be confusing, there was a 2022-6 that was put out initially, and our policy team are perfectionists, so they would need to get their hands on that and tweaked a little bit. So I'd encourage sellers to look for 2022-13, and it runs you through the complete list of responsibilities, the specs, everything behind the PDR, complete list of enumerations, and all the way down to how to do it. So that's where you'll first get an indication of the eligibility.
Excellent. And the transactions that they're available on.
Yeah, I don't have that up. It's I believe it's no cash out refi, primary home, second home, 90% max LTV, and then cash out primary residence 70%. They can go to that same bulletin. I'll also provide you some resources where they can go to get more information.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Scott. I wanted to answer that question for him. What else should anyone know, or what are the thoughts? You know, we downstream, we've touched on that, like what this means for the future state of kind of valuations, but what other else, I guess, to all the panelists, have you excited about continuing to see these things roll out, an opportunity for data to be used to drive value in the property?
I would just chime in, you know, as a lender and, you know, as the chief lending officer over originators, you know, overseeing how we can support them. That's, you know, our whole thing is built by originators for originators. So we serve our clients. So whether it's our retail originator or our account executives in the wholesale and correspondent channel, you know, that's our client. And so we listen to them. You know, most of the angst and anxiety comes, you know, when there's just the back and forth and the issue in the collateral review process, the appraisal process. You know, there's a big there's kind of this pivot that's been going on for the last couple of years where originators are doing more business outside of their local area. You know, they're doing more consumer direct-esque type activities, and that's okay. I mean, some of the largest lenders, that's their whole, you know, their whole gig. But here you have someone that's kind of a local community originator or lender that is, you know, now branching out outside of their sphere of influence. So, you know, they don't necessarily know the markets that they're always getting potential clients from, and you know that, you know, to be able to trust the appraisal system that's in place with the lender or that they've set up, or to reduce friction in that is important now more than ever. You know, even with volume being down from the record years we just had last couple of years, everything is always about reducing friction and saving time. You know, I'm a time ROI guy, because time is money. And so for me, you know, if you're, it's not I spent $1, I got 2 in return. It's I spent 30 minutes, I got 2 hours back in this new process. I got 3 days back in my appraisal review process, or 5 or 10 in some of the markets you guys talked about. So for us, we're just excited here back here at the street level, getting our teeth kicked in every day. We're just excited about reducing friction and making sure that we can, you know, we can just serve our clients faster, better, faster, and cheaper, in that order, by the way.
So I think the time component resonates with us too, right? The time and the potential turn time. I know, Kevin, you spoke earlier about the cost and the turn time. We're a little more sensitive and don't really delve into cost, and particularly the appraisal fee and how it may impact that side of the transaction. from a direct perspective, only because the appraisal requirements we're putting in place, we are in some of these levels of innovation, desktop being one, where there's an appraiser, we're asking the appraiser to do, we eliminate the field visit and the site work, but we're adding a lot more verification and maybe desk work. So we want to be sensitive to letting those market forces play out. But the point you made that I thought is really important, and you touched on it again, was the time component, and really understanding the impact of that from, expired rate locks, expired contracts. You talked about the hedge risk. I mean, think about just time compression in general, what it can mean, and you're a professed time guy. So I think that has significant input. One, two, we talked about earlier in the discussion, markets as they begin to normalize now, and why this is a good time. This is another good time to innovate, because guess what? In the middle of a 2020, 2021 span, when you guys all have hair, when your hair's on fire, not the time to innovate and knock on somebody's door and say, try this or try that. Now's the time to innovate. Now's the time to test, give companies like Class and others the opportunity to let the, evolve and develop and perfect the technology, allow lenders like you to be able to develop strategies to be able to support this, and allow us to get enough loans in where we're learning, and we may course correct along the way. But I'm absolutely convinced now's the right time to do it. And again, we really appreciate all your support in working with us.
I couldn't agree more with what Scott just said, especially around the time to innovate. Now, is not a time to be complacent again, because we're seeing the, smallest addressable market of appraisals that we've seen in years. And so turn times are falling back into more normal fashion. However, even with that, we're still 2 days faster in the modernization side, plus 2 days plus faster, and even greater in some other areas. And another reason now is the time is because the technologies are here. I mean, we have self-driving vehicles. Kevin, we didn't even talk about this the other week. We were sitting there and you had pulled over to park and I was driving, but you could have continued driving because your car can drive itself. And
hey, you brought it up. You brought it up. I mean, for me, I always use it as an example when I'm talking to, whether it's an underwriter or anyone else. I'm like, trust the technology, at least on the highway, right? Like, at least on the highway in the fast track lane, let the car drive itself. Like, just trust loan prospector, read the findings, just trust the technology. And there's a lot of people that kind of fear technology. So I'm not that guy, obviously, but it's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up, because I use that analogy all the time.
Yeah, and this is the same technology that's used to drive self-propelled vehicles. It's the same stuff. And it's now being leveraged in multiple spaces. It's becoming more of a commodity, so it's cost effective. More people can use it. The technology is available out there. Apple's releasing kits. Things are happening nonstop. It's like, go use it, innovate. We need to do more, and we need to get the market to buy in and understand the value of it. And that's our job, right? Josh is out there. We're all out there. We're trying to help people understand, especially because maybe early on, 3 years ago, you tried something in the hybrid space. You tried something, with the desktop solution. It didn't work out the way that you had hoped. So you abandon it and you walk away. The thing to understand is when you do it right, you gain premium results. And even in the desktop space, and Scott's heard us talk about this before, because the market hasn't shifted yet to have all that data readily available, and it leaves the appraiser forced to go and try to find all this information, which may or may not be there. We supplement it with the hybrid process today, because we know the hybrid process works. It works well. It drives premium results, and it'll help buy the market time to get there to where it can be captured at time of list, which is kind of all of our, wishful, like the coup de grace of where things should be. This data is available at time of list, and we can move on in a very quick fashion and really improve the experience for everyone. Now is the time. It's a great point, Scott.
No, absolutely. I was going to go to the Q&A and make sure we're doing that. Before that, I was just going to throw some housekeeping up on Scott's behalf. I think, Paul, if you could throw up the disclaimer. Thank you so much. Before we put Scott on the on the hot seat with some of the questions from the various people, we want to make sure we posted that up. And I see John Tallinger also.
You've made it when you have to have a disclaimer every time you talk.
Yeah. It's funny.
All right, so looking at that, From Paris, someone mentioned the streamlined nature of having a standardized form. Is there one for the ACE plus PDR?
Scott, do you want to take that, or?
Yeah, why don't you start, Scott? I mean, we have specifications in a data set, but you want to take that one, Scot Rose?
Yes. So there is a standard data set that is required for Freddie Mac, and it's both being built out for more automation, again, through API submission, as well as presented in a form. While the form may not be standard, it does have standard requirements that you have to adhere to and go through a verification process with Freddie Mac. And they also have a website up today that shows who's gone through that verification process, which might be handy for some of the folks on the webinar. But yeah, it is a standard data set that's required that needs to be produced in that form. It's going to look very similar to what a lot of appraisals look like today on the front page with some additional images.
Yeah, and I would say, to clarify, Scott's spot on. It's a verification process, not necessarily an approval process. And it's kind of a complicated spec. So my understanding is it's more of a spec in tech check on the verification. Is that correct, Scott?
That is correct.
Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. Another question from Robert. What extent do the property inspections done that may show property defects prior to the sale of these automated system? So that's probably more in your world, Scot Rose, on how our digital twin process is showing the possibility of a defect.
No, I think what they're alluding to in that question, if I'm not mistaken, is they're talking about property inspections related to purchase transactions, and why we've all worked in very disparate verticals up to this point. These are the kinds of standards and processes that might allow for some of that to be combined in the future. But today, that is still an independent component of the process. It's really related to the two real estate agents, the listing and the seller, and working through those property inspections. If I read that right.
Thank you, Scott. There's a question around if a PDR is completed by can it automatically be upgraded to a hybrid or a full appraisal if the property requires an upgrade, site conditions, or something of that nature?
And Scott, keep me honest here, but in policy, if the appraisal is required and it was an ACE plus PDR, that PDR can be used to generate a hybrid appraisal. So the appraiser does not have to go on site to do the inspection.
That's the intent. Absolutely. Yep. Correct.
And to expand on that, they said, should the folks completing the PDR be aware of these requirements? And I think that's kind of the beauty of the technology that you talked to earlier, Scott, that the individual doesn't need to actually understand it because the technology is capturing all of that in real time in all elements necessary for the various levels of the valuation.
Definitely the big benefit differentiator with the class solution is that we do virtual inspection. And so we are leveraging the imagery to collect and pull all of that information. Some other solutions may require some training of the individuals on site to collect those specifications as well.
Thank you, Scott. Another question from Jay. It says, as I understand it, class worked on the PDR pilot. Does this give us an advantage over AMCDs for producing this report and coverage across the country compared to our peers?
So the definitely advantage for class, we have been working on these for quite some time, not just with Freddie and Fannie and other portfolio lenders, but we have been able to build a pretty robust network of property data collectors out in the field.
And I would say too, we learned a lot through this
Yes.
launch and learn process.
I think everybody's learned a lot. That's not just class. I mean, these solutions have been, the test and learns have been going on since 2018, I believe. They started with a great concept, and everybody kind of had to work through and determine through learnings, and course corrections that Scott mentioned earlier, which will probably continue on to get us all to where we are today. And I think we're at the finally at a point where we're seeing such improved metrics and an improved experience across these solutions.
Follow-up question from Jay then is, what about deferred maintenance, safety issues, things of that nature? What will scanners be providing a cost to cure, and how do we plan to address that?
So if there is a cost to cure, that's a appraisal terminology. So potentially in the hybrid process and these data collection solutions, the scans can be used in the same fashion as if they were there on site, right? The class solution is essentially a virtual inspection platform. The appraiser goes in and they can, use virtual tours to basically inspect the property as if they were there physically, as well as all the data and everything that's extracted from these data specifications, which are very comprehensive and meant to kind of pull out that kind of information. As it relates to an ACE plus PDR, those are probably some of the components that would drive downstream, I would think, decisions into different product types, if that was identified. Scott, I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. I think it's one of two things. It's within the context or the confine of the PDR, you're just bringing light to any repairs that may need to be made that may or may not necessarily mean you need to upgrade, or if there's identification of adverse property conditions that are pretty significant, if they're functional external terms, again appraisal terms, but there's some lender participation as they consume those may need. Again, I think conceptually the PCR as a component is intended then not to require another site visit. Hopefully then it would be able to be sourced directly to an appraiser who could complete a hybrid appraisal.
That is correct. And if there are things that are, unfinished areas or things of that are identified in the property data collection solution, there is processes to go back out without having to engage an appraiser, send that individual to the property and ensure that those aspects have been completed and move forward with the process. Just as if you would in the appraisal process today.
Thank you, Scott and Scott. That seems to be kind of the end of our questions, but I see John Tallinger joined us. John, any thoughts, anything you wanted to share?
Hi guys, I'm remote in DC for National Mortgage Broker Day, so and my reception is not very good, so I'm kind of just a fly on the wall. So don't mind me. Great stuff, great content though.
You need a meaner backdrop. You're gonna have to reach out to Kevin offline.
I'll find one.
I'll mention, Josh, we talked a little bit about lender responsibility. I mean, just like with appraisals, there's a degree of lender responsibility when they are, consuming the PDR, do all the items match, ensuring all the exhibits are there, actually, taking a look to ensure there's a bigger suite of photographs, floor plan, a variety of things up to and including, putting eyes on the property to see if, what is being reported is actually, kind of passes the eye test, right? And all the things that are identified in the bulletin. But again, there's just some level of engagement to ensure that if, lenders feel like there's either repairs that need to be done or it needs to be upgraded, they're in control of that.
No, great thoughts. KP, any final thoughts from you?
Well, obviously, we just, we've touched them all. Love taking friction out of the system. I don't think, I can't say it enough. I think it's understated how much work went in to get this done. Again, I mean, you guys were in our boardroom, nearly years ago with this technology to be able to scan and collect data and just, just make the whole process better. So we're on board. Who isn't on board? Who doesn't like better, faster, and cheaper? And of course, not increasing risk. There's one thing that didn't get kind of brought up is that some of the data you guys collect, there's a term called dark data when you collect data that doesn't really get used. An example would be like maybe the ceiling heights, right? So vaulted ceilings are something that would, make a home more attractive, and that's not necessarily a data field that everybody collects. The technology collects it, and there are other things that it collects regarding the appliances and whatnot. So, there is more information that hasn't even been adopted by the industry as a data point to help evaluate collateral that you're collecting as well. And I think that over time that will also evolve as well. And so again, I think it's this part of the industry has always been it's got like this myth of being like, archaic, and there's, some old dude's going to go out there with like a measuring tape. It's not like that anymore. And it hasn't been like that for years. I mean, these guys who are experienced, they're going out with technology already. They've got technology on their phone that they're taking measurements. They're training the next generation, and they're getting better and they're getting faster. And so I know it probably doesn't feel that way because, 20 and 21 was just so crazy. But the collateral valuation industry has taken leaps and bounds. And just thank you for being on the forefront of it and want me to chime in and give my opinion. You guys asked me to come on board. I'll talk about anything with anyone. So I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate your time. Scot Rose, final thoughts?
Final thoughts, just again, excited about the foundation being built. I love seeing this go to policy, allowing for, more people to participate in really expanding the data collection that's going on out there and driving the future solutions that we can build on top of it. And as always, from a class perspective, make sure you understand all solutions aren't created equal. So don't run away from these programs if you've had a bad experience in the past, and make sure you come back and give it a try and see the value that it can create for you and your organization. So appreciate everybody joining, and excited to, continue driving forward.
And finally, Scott, as the star of this with the new program coming out, any final thoughts or messages for everybody listening in?
I thank all your participants for their kind attention. I appreciate you all and Kevin and your team at Class for the invitation. I would just say, I come to work, just excited about all the emerging tools and technology and about the innovation and modernization path that we all have a chance to have our hands on in creating and developing. And I think it is exciting. And I think there's not one thing that's going to solve all of our concerns that we have, but I think by being open-minded to it, a broader lens about all this, understanding, we're not trying to let perfect get in the way of the good. If there's a good idea, we are going to launch it, and we are trying, and we may need to correct along the way, but waiver and tradition, some automated options that need more information, which is ACE plus PDR. And then there are options going up the spectrum that include an appraiser. I'll say to my appraiser friends, if there's any listening, I know we wake up every morning nervous just because we do, and that a lot of innovation and modernization feels like appraiser elimination. I can tell you as an appraiser, if anything like that, we have a capacity, an appraiser capacity concern that's very real. And I think we've got innovation in technology, which can enable endless options going forward. And a lot of those options and a lot of that technology we're going to put in the hands of the appraiser. So a desktop appraisal, hybrid appraisal, if you're bifurcating the process in an appraisal up to a traditional appraisal, are all appraisals. They all require an appraiser. So I tell my appraiser friends, I say, the work may look a little bit different, and lower risk loans, you may have an opportunity to do a desktop assignment, but you're still going to be engaged in the process. And lower risk loans, to borrow an appraisal term, is not really the highest and best use of your time, particularly during crazy, just unprecedented markets like we've seen the past couple of years. So anyway, it's a long way to say, I would just encourage everybody across the stakeholder spectrum to remain positive, and we're fully engaged at Freddie Mac. So we just really appreciate you all, being very open-minded to this and letting us be a part of this conversation here today.
Scott, if I may, I just want to thank you as a lender partner. We're a seller servicer with both Fannie and Freddie and an issuer, Ginnie. Remember when Loan Prospector came out, all the underwriters thought they'd be, underwritten out of existence. They're in high demand and as expensive as ever. When you guys released Day One Certainty, it opened up this huge surge to compress the entire time of the process. And this is no different. This is definitely revolutionary just as much as the other two. And I think you point to the appraisers to grasp on this. I think the ones that adopt this early, they're going to get more market share and more partnerships, because it's still a relationship business, right? I mean, this technology just gives us more time to do the stuff that's fun, which is develop relationships. So thank you again for being on the forefront. Fannie and Freddie always opens up a whole new chapter of technology and disruption. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
And thank you to the entire panel. Very exciting being able to sit and spend time with you today, hear your thoughts on it. KP from the lender perspective, very wonderful. And the Scots, just all your knowledge has been great. Even John just showing up here to be a fly on the wall was a wonderful time. So for myself and the class team, we thank everyone for attending. We thank everyone for participating from the panel perspective. And if there's anything follow-up we can help clarify, please let me know. We are here to help support this innovation and great kind of change in the industry. So appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh, Scott, John, JT, Paul, Nick, for the partnership. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.